I'm Rick Bota, the director of Hellraiser Hellworld.
I'm Nick Phillips, the executive producer of the film, along with...
I guess that makes me Joel Soisson, who wrote the original story and then gets sent back to the office.
And I am Gary Tunnicliffe, special makeup effects designer on Hellworld.
So we shot this in Romania.
Shocker.
Yeah.
Again.
2 years ago. Took a while for this picture to come out.
It was a bit of a struggle.
What was the reason for that?
Cha-ching.
In a nutshell.
Corporate bureaucracy and...
The fact that we love Romania. We've had such a walloping good time there on Dracula, so it could be done.
Rick, we stole that shot for Prophecy 5, I just want you to know.
After getting some feedback from people watching the show, we sort of threw that up front just to sort of telltale a little bit of what was coming in the future, so it didn't just jump out at y'all's exposition at the end.
I think it kind of worked. I actually didn't realize you did that, and I thought it sort of set a nice mystery there.
It actually was a great idea, and it was given by Clive himself. Clive actually saw a screening of this very early on, and it was a note from him, and I took it to heart and put it in, and it really worked very well. Tony Adler did a great job on cutting this movie. We'll talk more about him as it goes on. These shots right here were actually, I always wanted this little impressionistic opening, sort of a, religious kind of overtones. I don't know why, but it was just, when we shot this location, it just jumped out at us. But we shot each one of these little pieces because we were so far behind this particular day that we shot all of these little shots in probably 45 minutes. I mean, I'm not kidding, we were just ripping around at the end of our time here at this church. We did some on and off cameras right there we knew we were going to cut them in and how this picture was going to be cut, so I had some of that stuff.
Well, I think it works within the context of the credit sequence too, you know.
So again, this story was written by Joel as a little short called Dark Can't Breathe, and there's a whole story behind that and how that picture came from that script to this story, which we'll talk about, but basically Joel had the story.
Well, actually, it began mostly as kind of a way of jotting down what I thought my own worst nightmare was, and then going, well, how can I make this worse? And that the whole concept of being buried alive was sort of the inception of the idea, and then the rest was sort of piling on. And at a certain point, I walked away, and the guys here just kept piling on more and more, and it to me, it truly worked. It was something that, for me, gets very unsettling in many places.
Yeah, it came across my desk as a treatment, some time before we ended up doing this movie, and I thought it was just great in and of itself. And in trying to sort of find some use for it, we obviously decided to try to sort of integrate it with the Hellraiser mythology, and it.
Yeah, the idea of implanted memories and being able to put somebody into a mental state of where they may or may not have been, and leaving the audience off balance that whole time, it sort of fits in the sort of Hellraiser
right
iconography of like
not really knowing
right
what's real and what's not at any given moment.
And also, there's always seemingly a debt to pay for sins and misdeeds in this life. So they always become sort of morality plays in a way.
It
Hold
does.
on, there's a debt to pay for sins?
Yeah, you didn't get the memo?
Damn, I've got anything to say for that.
But actually, the reality of how that came to be and how Dark Can't Breathe came into Hellworld was we piggybacked these two together. Hellworld was shot right after Deader a couple of years ago in Romania, and we went over there to shoot two pictures back to back, and we actually went over with one script under our arms, and that was Deader, and the other one was sort of being written as we were shooting Deader. So the drafts kept coming in on the second script, which was at that time something completely different. I don't really recall what it was, and it just never really fleshed out. There was somewhat of a story there. If I recall, it was like about a rave or something, a rave party.
sort of the same idea in the sense that it takes place at a party in a house, but I think there was also a lot of sort of period flashbacks involved in it, you know, and it was sort of a little more logistically complicated than what we had in mind.
There was all sorts of stuff in it. It was really
Yeah.
very different to what
Some
we
Nazi
ended up
flashbacks.
Yeah, it was a totally different story. And to Rick's credit, he'd already started shooting the first half of this twofer.
Well, yeah, that's actually what I wanted to sort of throw in. Actually, again, also to Rick's credit, is that normally when we do these 2-for-1 deals in Romania, we would shoot 2 movies at the same time, meaning on any given day you'd be shooting a scene from one or the other. Well, Hellraiser, Deader, and Hellworld are interesting because Deader was shot, and then there was maybe a few days or several days in between each movie to sort of, instead of shooting it sort of all at once, we actually shot them back to back, and I think Rick did a great job of really coming off of one specific movie and really shifting gears and sort of riding right into this film, which is sort of thematically different and tonally different in a lot of ways.
Which we set out to do.
Right.
But it was funny because we went over there, as I said, with only one script, and we kept waiting because we had, if I recall, we had I think a 4 or 5 week prep. And that time we were supposed to prep both films and then go into shooting them back to back. Well, we never got the script all through the preps. We were very well prepped on Deader because that's all that we prepped. And then we shot it, and I think we finally, basically, we at the very last minute, we decided that script was just not going to work over there. I don't recall the title, but about the rave party. And that's when we started looking for material. And lo and behold, Joel had the script, Dark Can't Breathe. Well, it was a treatment.
It was a treatment, yeah.
Treatment that could have very easily been turned into a picture on its own. It was a great little sort of tweaked story, as he explained. But we just were jonesing for some material at that time, and somebody came up with the idea, why don't we take that and turn it into a Hellraiser? Well, we went back to Carl Dupre, who I had worked with on Hellseeker, and said, hey, Carl, we're into a bit of a jam here. Are you interested in reading something and turning it into a Hellraiser, like basically overnight?
Right.
And Carl came in, read the script, and came up with this pitch, which was Hellworld, and said, I want to take that script and turn it around, and what do you think about sort of stepping outside the box and making it about the Hellraiser theme and sort of looking at itself and just turning it into this whole Hellworld party and so forth. And took Joel's material, turned it into a script, and literally, I think he had, from treatment to script, I think it was, if I recall, it was like 2 weeks or something. And he came out with
even less time to prep it, Rick. I think you prepped the whole film in about a week.
We did.
Yeah.
It was the very last week, and
With sort of the script, still taking form as you were prepping it, which again, I think, it's just a great testament to turning this around and actually making this a really fun movie.
So any producers out there, if you're short on prep time and you need a director who can prep in 6 days, we have one right here.
That's Rick's preferred
That's it.
working method now.
Well, it's funny,
Give him
but-
no more than a week.
Yeah,
But we really did.
Before you have no effects in it because it wasn't easy to do the effects prep in a week.
no.
And you were over there too, as well, Gary.
No, we came back for
you did?
a week. To
But
prep.
Nick, if you recall, I mean, you and I were up on. I remember it was a couple days before we started shooting, and we were up in the, in the restaurant over at our hotel, and
Yeah.
it was with you and me and Gary and.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
And we would just be sitting up there and saying, "What do you think about this?
What are we gonna do?"
Yeah, take a scene and rewrite it for me." will you?"
During that prep week, we went to that executive lounge on the top
Many
floor of
hours in
the
there,
Bucharest
yeah.
Marriott, just spitballing ideas
Yeah.
and really trying to, sort of help the script take shape, and sort of piggyback onto Carl's work.
So Carl saved the day. He came through with this idea about the Hellworld thing, and off we went. So that was the concept, and then
How'd you go about casting this?
casting is always a challenge.
Same way we did most of our movies. I mean, if you look there, Kari Payton there, he was also in Dracula 2, played the character of Kenny, and was someone that we, were really interested in working with again, and did a fantastic job on Dracula, and somebody that we thought could bring, sort of a realistic element to to these kids.
Derek. Actually, the big role in this for me and the most fun was Lance Henriksen, and actually how that worked out so well. I came up the day that I got there in Romania. I went down and met everybody over at Castel Films, and that night went over to the restaurant to have dinner. And I saw a bunch of guys because Lance was just finishing up on Mimic 3.
Mm-hmm.
And I went down and I saw him, and somebody introduced me to him, and I thought, oh my God, Lance Henriksen, I love his work. And immediately we started. This was back when we were doing Deader, but I thought I started thinking if there's any role in Deader that he could play, and there was nothing actually that was sizable enough for Lance to even consider doing it. But I thought maybe there will be something in Hellworld. So actually, I told I told Carl early on when he started writing. I said, because I asked Lance, I said, would you consider coming back? I'm a big fan. I'd love to work with you. He said, sure. If it's something quirky and if I read it and I respond to it, I'd be happy to
And I
consider
can
it.
go to the casino.
Yeah. Enough said. And so Carl actually, I think, wrote the host with Lance in mind. And once we got it, we sent it immediately to him, and I was really delighted and surprised that he said he'd jump back on a plane and head back over. So
No, absolutely, and it's right. It was fairly soon after he had finished his work on Mimic, so that, he sort of was back in the States maybe for a few weeks, and then came right back and did the work for Hellraiser. And I think he did a great job just having somebody of Lance's caliber in these movies.
Well, the weirdest thing was being
fun.
actually in the casino on the last night of Prophecy and hearing Lance's voice, and Lance was back
Yeah.
to do another project as
Yeah.
well. So, because the truth is, we only you only cast Mr. Payton because we got his fake head from Dracula and we could use it
Which
again.
is a hilarious
That's the only
little
reason we used
fact, is that it was easy to cast Kari because Gary already had his head in
I
his
love
trailer.
Kari, but that was the only reason we cast him because we got his
Kari,
fake head.
that's
Sorry, Kari.
That's not true, even if it is true.
And the dark-haired girl, actually, Anna Tolpett,
Tolpett?
was somebody who gave a really great reading for the
right.
Marla part in Hellraiser Deader. She was one of the sort of crew of UK actors that would come in a lot on these movies that we would look at, and gave just a fantastic reading for Marla, but obviously did not get the part. So when time came for this movie, we really tried to find something for her because we thought she was just a great great young actress.
And then Catherine and Henry, yeah?
When did you get this stuff?
I was going to talk about this stuff. Actually, the challenge of this movie was that we wanted to set it, and we thought that we could because it's very difficult. Although Romania I had a great experience over there. It's a great place to shoot, great crews, fantastic locations, but it's got to be something that is set in Eastern Europe.
Yeah.
I mean, there's really the exterior locations, while beautiful and Gothic, they only go a certain ways. So we thought we put this in place as in upstate New York and thought we could kind of get away with it. From here on, we really can take a little bit of a stretch on the architecture of the house there. But that scene that we just jumped into, there's actually a street that we just went through, and we searched high and low to try and find like a street that could sort of double for you don't see much of it for upstate New York. But to answer your question, we then went and shot. All this was shot in November and December of 2002.
Freezing cold.
Yeah.
And extremely cold. And this was actually one of the first scenes. It actually went from balmy to just freezing.
Yeah.
But then we went back and actually shot some stuff in the spring. We had some pickups, and Joel and Mike were actually kind enough to find some money in the budget to send us back. 'Cause we had a bunch of holes. There's always a certain amount of insert work you have to do, and a couple of reshoots on some scenes. And so they found a way to send us back there, send me back, and we were able to shoot for about another 3 or 4 days, I think, while they were shooting Prophecy.
Yeah. To
And
get
what-
those exteriors.
Yeah, went to shot at those stairs. Why does everybody stop?
Why did
talking?
I quiet when the press came on?
I noticed the same thing.
And actually, the line is so good that Carl puts in, and he says,
Beautiful scenery.
he said gratuitous tit shot, which it totally was.
At least we're self-referential of that.
That's exactly what the whole movie really was,
Yeah.
and just
That was
jumping
the
out.
fun about it. Was the fact that it was inside the Hellraiser gamut as well,
Yeah.
and inside the film thing.
I'm gonna jump back for a second and say that I think finding that house was a real
It was a great house.
was a coup as well. It was
Well,
it's
with
difficult to find a place like that can be the sort of the creepy iconic house. And what's even stranger about it is that it's right in the middle of Bucharest. I mean, if you look about 30 yards to the right of the house when you're facing it, it's one of the main thoroughfares of the city. And I think we did a great job of sort of making it seem like the remote upstate New York house that it is.
And you could shoot the whole place. Every
Yeah.
level was completely different. There were so many rooms to it, and the attic was cool and everything, wasn't it?
Yeah.
well, half of those rooms were designed and built by Christy Nicolescu, correct?
All the stage work, yeah. Christy, who was the production designer in all of our films, I think, right?
That's right.
On Deader and also on The Prophecy. He's just a
Christy's awesome.
wonderful and talented guy.
Essential.
Smells a bit, but he's got a heart of gold.
Gary, that's just
True. Moving on.
And then
And here comes-
here's Lance. Yeah.
I kind of wanted to make his first presence right here, the low angle looking up.
Absolutely.
Henry Cavill there, we're so lucky to have. He's just a young actor from England who came over and did this.
He's
and
actually from the Isle of Man. He's not from.
Is he?
He's from the Isle of Man.
oh, like we know
The resident
difference.
Brit is
Yeah. Good
did
old
it
Henry
correcting us
Cavill.
for it. Henry was also very close to getting the role of Superman.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think he lost that last minute, but he's going to go great places. That guy.
But well known from the Count of Monte Cristo. That's where he's
Exactly.
known by a lot of people.
So here we had some fun, just just filling it up with the all the Hellraiser icons and things, and props are us. But actually, it was funny because I remember when we said this, we wanted to load the whole house up with all of the Hellraiser material, and after we had we had some chains and we had the boxes, and then we
Some
said,
hooks.
we were like, now what? We got the Hellraiser deck of cards.
That's why there's a million different boxes in there.
So we sort of,
Well, the large puzzle box out in the foyer there was fantastic.
Yeah.
That was funny.
The funny thing about this was the fact that if you shot this in America, your set would have been robbed and pilfered every day by everyone on the film. But
Yeah.
Romanians don't know anything about Hellraiser, so they don't really care. They're just like, what's all these boxes for,
Gary, I hate to break it to you, but nobody cares. I care, though.
We all care.
Absolutely.
So this is all of that. This is when the three of them so subtly.
This was very tricky, though, wasn't it, in terms of coming up with ways that these people can sort of ingest the hypnotic substance without overtly doing it to tip the audience off, much
Yeah.
less themselves.
Yeah, that was the key here in the writing, but also in the execution. We just kind of really wanted to downplay everything. And then when I look at it now, oh my God, we had the red arrow with the drinks right there.
But it
Ding,
really
ding,
isn't.
ding.
No, it's not.
It's not though.
But it
you're-
isn't. At the first screening, I think that it really masked itself well.
No, but that was the sort of key there, is to not make it seem so overt and, insert drugging here.
And
you
not
know?
everybody-
In the
Everybody's
first
drinking.
draft, Lance just gave a horrendous kind of noxious blast of gas, if I remember rightly. He just kind of let one rip, and that was no. Right, okay. Moving on.
I don't remember. What was it, Joel? In Dark Can't Breathe, how did he? Or what?
They were similar, but not as well kind of conceived. But even in the original, the means by which they got dosed was subtle enough that they had no idea it was happening at the time. So that, to wind up buried alive and having all these sort of post-hypnotic suggestions telling them at this rave party sounded fairly credible to me at the time, but then I was on hypnotics at the time, so...
I was heavily medicated.
So that foyer that they were in up top and where the party was going, that was actually a third location because we had the house, which was only for the exterior. It didn't have very good interior. And then there was another house that was right in downtown. It was the Writers Guild, if I'm
Called
not
the
mistaken.
Writers.
Yeah.
Writers'
Writers'
House.
House.
And it was wonderful interiors. And that's where all that was shot. And then everything else, all the different locations and basements. This was another location. It was a hospital in town. It was actually a university
I was
hospital.
thinking of the Writers' House.
Yeah.
Carl Dupre got very hostile every time you guys were shooting in the Writers Guild building for some
Yeah.
reason. No idea why.
Actually, just as a great little tidbit, the actress in the picture of Sister Ursula, who shows up later, and the actress who flashed the quote gratuitous tit shot, were the two women standing behind Corey Wurr and
Joey was
being
the guy.
very affectionate with each
also,
other in the subway scene in Deader. And Sister Ursula was also in
attacked by dogs
Prophecy
in
4.
Prophecy.
She was saved
Whenever
by
it comes
Clara.
to showing breasts in Romania, there's a couple of girls you go to, and
You always go to
she's one of
Sister
them.
Ursula.
That's right.
Well, those casting tapes to cast those women who would flash their breasts were very. You have to take a very professional slant in looking at those casting tapes. It's a lot of hard work.
That is a great set.
Just like you have
This
to
was
take
a
a
great
professional
set.
slant
Yes.
looking at Gary's work here.
Exactly.
This was a great set. I loved this set.
So-
I could have lived on this set.
This was great bunch of work, and it was really difficult to get all this stuff conceived and prepared enough time
It was
to.
a nightmare.
So this little rubber baby coming up here that's going to give the big jump. It's actually coming up in a minute. It was actually a lot more involved in the story early on. In one of the first drafts, we had this, and why it's so well. I think you spent so much time and energy and probably money.
Hydro baby.
Yeah, the hydro baby was that we were actually going to have this little baby that was going to be part of the nightmarish illusions that they're having, and it was going to be running around, and there's all these scenes where the baby was attacking them and running around corners, and it just ended up being too expensive, and in the short amount of time that we had prepped, and just too expensive anyhow to have robotics, and then we were going to have CG and full-scale animation, and
We made a lot of it. We brought it with us, but it was kind of jettisoned, wasn't it?
yeah.
Well, actually, that was in the original treatment because my two greatest nightmares are being buried alive and having that dancing baby from Ally
evil
McBeal in
version.
my house.
That's pretty much what it was.
It's actually, if I can say something, one of the things I love about the set too is also just the way it's lit and shot. I think you and Gabby collaborated pretty well, Rick, on this movie. Again, in terms of trying to differentiate it from the specific look of Deader, and then coming into sort of a different motif on this movie. There you go.
That's Hydro Baby.
Great job.
Which actually, if you look closely, it's actually got a cleft palate, and we made it kind of freakish. It's got like a elongated head and everything. And that was actually sculpted by Jeff Yeager.
Well, that baby there, it holds up to a close-up because it's not just some of these other things are just put in the background and not meant to really be shot in close-up. But that one was...
Jeff Yeager sculpted that.
Yeah, I actually had mentioned to you about that, and I think the crew list for Prophecy got...
Yeah, I guess
That
that's
wasn't-
where
'cause there's
he
only-
got an extra credit on one
I
of the
think
prophecies.
I think our post-production supervisor put the wrong credits on.
Well, Yeager's a stud. I mean, he was our lead actor in Lower Level, a film we did like 15 years ago.
But Jeff Yeager sculpted that baby. He's brilliant at sculpting
Yeah.
weird babies.
Yeah, it was a much bigger character, the Hydro Baby. It was a shame we had to cut it. Those damn studio
That's
hacks.
okay. I have the rights to his sequel,
Nice. Hydro Baby. The Revenge of Hydro Baby.
It lives.
So we talked about the set, though. This was a huge undertaking, and actually it worked out so well. I think that Joel used this in Prophecy, right?
Yes, I did.
You shot a Prophecy right after we wrapped this. Joel went in and directed his
I think I
Prophecy.
used all your sets, Rick.
Well, this one in particular showed up, and this is such a great set that Christy designed. And it's so amazing. This one I marvel at, and I think I commented on Deader as well, that, here, no telling if you walked into any set here and had to have something of that scale built, the number of man hours, but just people in general, bodies out there with tools and hammers and all the equipment. And any day you'd be building on the set, there'd be maybe 2 guys up plastering. This was built just slowly but surely, but just by a real minimal crew. And
And there was a great
attention to
detail on it.
detail.
Detail
yeah.
was just amazing.
And everything is just hand built.
Hello?
There he is.
So she has been under the spell, medicated, shall we say.
That's
and is-
her drug point.
And actually, that shot of her right there, that quick little flash of her in the coffin, was another note given by Clive. And again, I tip my hat to him because he gave me some great suggestions, which was originally we didn't have those cuts and all the information. And we'll talk about it more as it gets to it. But Lance gives off that 20-minute description. Well, I'm exaggerating. I want to say it. Wait. Lance gives off that 5-minute expositional speech at the end to sort of catch you up as to what happened, and we just bombard you with the whole story. And everybody was buried alive, and they're all in the coffins, and we showed it then. And Clive just watched it and gave us great suggestions. Just sort of pepper that stuff in. Really quick cuts. It's ghastly imagery. It works really well, and you really don't have. We had to we sort of cut and recut and trying to put it in there with her hammering. Now, of course, after you see it, the story, you go back and see exactly what it is. But on the first pass, you really don't pick up what exactly where she is and what's happened.
No, I think it works much better.
The phones was another thing. They had these phones that were written, and we wanted to have originally for this whole party, 50 telephones all lined up as people come in, but just in.
We had
to
to
get
get
the
phones
ec-
off all the crew that day. We
the
were
en-
giving our phones in, I remember.
The
It's like,
economics
we need your
of-
phone.
Yeah, in Bucharest, I think we were able to round up around 10 cell phones, and we just kind of kept repeating them in the
It
shot.
was Ron Schmidt's phone and my phone, Nick's phone. Everyone had to put their phone in there for a
Some of
day.
them started to ring during certain things.
right.
That's the office calling. Chris is really good too. That's Chris Jaco.
Yeah.
I think he's a Canadian actor.
He's a Canadian actor that we're really lucky to get. He and
Catherine's Canadian as well,
yeah,
isn't she?
Catherine Winnick.
No, Catherine's great too. Chris, Chris's character was sort of the tough. He's sympathetic, and all the other kids seem just a little more happy-go-lucky, and Jake seems to be a little more sort of has a little more baggage, I think. And I think he pulled that off well without seeming too mopey.
He
you
did
know?
play it a bit with just a performance filled with despair, and anger, which was sort of the background between he and Adam. How these 2 lost kids.
This set also shows up in Prophecy 4 when they are evacuating. At the end there, the flashback. Now, Catherine's great. I think we throw in a precursor here about her ass-kicking abilities. Am I right?
Yeah, she's a 2nd-degree black belt in Taekwondo, isn't she?
Yeah, so we tried to throw in a couple of little...
And which wasn't written. That was
No, yeah.
post-casting
Yeah.
that we said if we got her, is there a way we can just take advantage of that? And so Carl went to work and we sort of came
I have
up
a
with
nice
that
story about
scene.
Catherine. At the end of this movie, we wrapped this film on the 23rd of December, and I personally was going back to be in Los Angeles on my own. And Catherine found out, and Catherine was like, "Why don't you come to Canada and spend Christmas with me and my family?" And I barely knew Catherine, but I didn't actually go. But she was very kind to offer. So
Yeah, it's a nice offer.
it was nice.
You were afraid you're going to put the moves on her and get your ass kicked, weren't you?
Well, I don't think she knew what she was getting into. To have Gary saying, "Jim Bowl turkey."
Me and the Hydro baby are hungry. But it was very kind of her, and I never forgot it. So.
That's sweet.
She actually just got a role playing Ivana Trump in the
Oh, really?
Donald Trump
Wow.
story.
Wow.
You are not guilting me into having a promise.
Actually, all the cast were great fun. We did a lot of prosthetic stuff to them and beat them all up quite badly at various points in this. I mean, everything from burying them in the ground in the freezing cold to having dirt rain on them, and they were all real troopers.
They were.
There was no complaints, and they were all awesome. They thoroughly got into the gore as well. Especially Henry Cavill.
Yeah.
He loved it.
So here's the first of the death sequences coming up here with Anna. I forget her character's name. Sorry, it's been 2 years.
I can't remember.
Allison.
Allison.
Alice. Well done, Nick.
Rock, Nick.
Somebody's got to keep track.
Allison calls down to Derek here and ruins his chances of some play with these two girls, and then she goes off and finds herself in that little secluded room, which has its own. We were coming up with the first killing, and Carl had written this giant chair that locks her in, and we were gonna just have these spinning blades toward her, and I think it was even more involved. But then we just turned it over to Gary and said, "What can you do?" And I think this was early on in the schedule as well. It actually probably was earlier, and if I recall, we pushed it a few days just to give you some more time to prepare for it.
Yeah, but luckily it was really the way you shot it that got away with it, because those blades, and it was one of those things that you didn't realise until we did it, but we got the blades in there and they spanned so fast that they actually looked like they weren't moving, although
Yeah.
they were actually spinning at really, really high speed.
The original concept, by the way, was based on, is it the scarificator? What are those machines that they used to bleed
Called a
people?
sacrificator, wasn't it? Yeah, that was what it was.
And-
Scarificator.
Yeah, it's actually what killed George Washington. But the old idea that they used to bleed people just to get these noxious humors out of their body, not realizing they were doing more harm than good.
Right.
And Carl ramped it up a couple levels, I think, and then when you guys executed it, it didn't quite look like something designed for health purposes anymore.
Have a great time tonight. Go fuck
We
somebody.
got through a lot of blood that
When
day.
you sober
I
up,
remember.
We did.
And we got it everywhere. Actually, Doug took a load in the face.
Yeah. You see that on the outtakes.
It does show up in the outtakes, yeah.
That went well.
Not the first time for Doug.
Whoa, hey, baby. You know what would look good on you?
Me.
enjoy the party.
This is that little karate scene that we used here, just a foretelling of the big kick that's to
This-
come at the end.
This character here was kind of based on Rick himself too. I think the
The gold
the
chains.
actor
and the
really.
other- yeah.
Well, that's how you dress on set most of the day, so...
He was actually very, very funny, but he did not speak a lick of English.
Yes.
And we shot him sort of wide, but we just had him sort of mouth the words. And if you look closely, the words are not really coming out. We obviously dubbed him, but he really he couldn't handle the language at all. But his performance was just so great. Comical and a little bit of relief right there before the big
Always
killing.
a
Yeah.
temptation, that sign.
Step into another sequence in here on stage. And again, just the lighting by Gabby Cosas. I loved his work, and it didn't work out on Deader. I ended up working with Vivi, and then after that one was over, I thought that Gabby would be so much better suited for this picture, since we were trying to give it a little bit more of a Western look. But each and every scene I just look at, it just looks absolutely gorgeous as we're watching it here. And that was actually based on Nick right there.
That was a cast. Yeah. Gary himself had to
That's
pour
actually-
that.
yeah.
Pour that
It
mold.
was cold that day, to be unfair.
Shrinkage.
Wasn't
Yeah.
that cold. It was quite warm on it.
Quiet. Yeah, this chair was just insane.
Look how beautiful that is. That's a beautiful...
Really nice.
Yeah.
Christy designed this and built this all by hand. Here it comes, and then again we had this whole thing wired with your work was the two spinning blades.
Well, actually, that piece behind her head is actually cardboard. We had to make that on the day so it would fit behind her head. You know? So it was all everyone trying to kind of just get everything to work together, and that's actually me pushing that up.
I know. I just love when I look at these things. You're down at the bottom, and all these metal clinking and screaming right now, and the music, and it's really going. Push it faster, slower. It's shaking, Gary. It's shaking.
Sacrifice that was quite becoming on you, Alice.
I'll bet if you went around slowly and looked at that pan around, you'd probably see you back there down below. I think I just saw you down there. But this is actually really weird because although they're plastic, made out of plastic, they were
they're
very,
spinning
very
so
sharp.
fast they would really cut you. They would really cut you.
And we were there on the day we had to shoot it. We really, we knew what we were in for. But once you get a person in there behind it and those things are spinning, I mean, it really was.
Which is why a lot of the time we actually went backwards.
Yeah.
We actually started near her neck and pushed away from her.
And then the actual ones where they're very close, they're all digital. And
Which is great because Jameson was able to make them a bit thicker as well and a bit more menacing.
Exactly. James did a great job at tweaking it. And he added some blood spurting in there. And I think a couple other, I don't remember, I'll have to see it as it comes up here. But all the stuff, it's really far away from her right there. But then all this stuff right here we actually shot in reverse coming up here where you see it coming into her neck. Yeah,
Those are going really fast.
Yeah, that was.
She was really funny as well, and it was like
she's a total sport.
That was digital blood right there. We actually had the cut coming up, some blood coming up. It just wasn't enough, and so Jameson added that. And I love this on the day. This was always planned, but actually Jameson had to clean that up because I wanted that blood to take us out into red.
Right.
And then actually we had this plan that Gabby did a great job. We dissolved into a red light onto her here. But actually you could see, I think it was your hand.
Yeah.
I never knew that was in the bottom, squirting up the blood.
Holding
so
the blood tubes.
The modern day CG work, we just took his hand out.
No, I saw a cut and I was like, my hand's there.
Take a look at your mark. There it is.
You're giving it all away.
And this was back in the Writers Guild house, which we took over for a couple days, and they were very, very kind enough to give it to us. But I think after the third or fourth day that we actually stretched it, and maybe one extra fifth day, they were starting to get a little irritated that we were still there. Those are digital blades. You can see they're not quite registered. They're shaking just ever so slightly. I love the keep out sign. It was so, when we're over there, I just wanted to have some sign like that says keep out or get out and I can't remember why we didn't just make it by the art department, but I sort of had this like a steel sign that I would see like a no trespassing sign. And of course we're over there, that just doesn't exist. So we put a note in to have somebody ship it out. Can you ship one of these things out?
I bought a keep out sign with them.
You brought it out there, and all of a sudden you look at it and go, well, this isn't what I had in mind, but we shoot in 20 minutes, so yeah.
So it was like pick up a keep out sign. It was like straight down to Lowe's and grab a keep out sign.
Exactly.
That was Stelika who played Adam. And he couldn't speak any English at all, could he?
No.
I did many makeups on him.
Wonderful kid right
Just
there.
grinned all the time. And you tortured that poor
Yeah.
guy. Naked in the middle of places.
Yeah, and that flashback
And on the film
scene.
too.
There he is right there,
Yeah.
going right by him with...
I always thought that was a nice little touch.
And this was a stage. We were on stage here. Actually, if I recall, this was like the last day. And we built, so all this was all pieced together and all shot. And that's just, I always just sort of tip my hat to all the actors. It's so difficult to keep in the mode and to regroup. This was shot at the end of the schedule on the walk up the stairs at the beginning. And I'm always just amazed they can pull it off, and the magic of film.
I was just watching all those inserts of the phones thinking, why are they so familiar? And then realising I had to shoot a bunch of that stuff.
That you shot those?
I shot some
You
of
probably
those,
did, yeah. Well, that was the whole thing I've mentioned when we were here last time. It was so great having you there because we just walk away if we didn't, very often we would just, in fact, coming up here on this scene, we would just shoot the performers in and do the as much as we could, but we're very comfortable in walking away and just having you go at it with your crew. And you shot all this box stuff coming up.
Yeah, we did. We
Worked
had a great
really
time
well.
with it.
It's just a game. That wasn't in Dark Camp Breathe. That's all Carl's work. I think taking it down and circling it back around to the whole puzzle box is a reference to the puzzle box. It's just a game.
The sense of the bereaved father getting back was sort of the original point, but it was developed into this whole added strain by Carl that I thought was pretty provocative.
Some nice lighting in this scene as well.
Real pretty.
Just for a note for Hellraiser fans, obviously that isn't the normal Hellraiser box. We did a thing called the Invitation box, which is kind of black and very different. Rick wanted something that wasn't the regular Hellraiser box, so it's actually a raised.
It's a close-up of it here, yeah?
Yeah.
So you can tell the difference.
Well, we want to because it isn't the real box. He drops it here and it springs apart. Obviously, if he opened it and it was a real box, it'd have a whole different outcome. So we said, let's make something that clearly. And I actually really liked that box, but we went out and said, let's make something that the fans will see and say, wait, that's not the real box. And then of course you guessed right as he drops it. That's such a wicked shot. I love that. Jameson did a great job on that.
Is it just a game now, Jake?
And again, one of those quick 4-scene cuts to where Jake ends up in the coffin at the end. This next scene, he goes to the window and looks out, and it was Lance's first shot. I remember the day that he got there. He actually flew in from the airport and came right out, and we threw him into, I think he just had his clothes on from the day we gave him the overcoat. Just said, do you mind digging a hole? So he's,
No problem.
he's jet lagged. He's
What do you
like
want me to do?
right there. He came across.
A freezing night.
You
Yeah.
bastards.
11 o'clock at night, take the shovel and go dig. And you know what? He dug his ass off.
He did.
He is a wonderful man.
He's got his Lufthansa booties on, doesn't he?
I spent some great times with Lance, just sitting. Lance is one of those guys you can sit in a bar with and he will talk about every film he's ever worked on and give you stories about it. And at no point do you get he's like, oh, give me a break. He's so accommodating.
No, he doesn't seem self-aggrandizing when telling these stories, you know. And he's a great poker player. He actually taught me a lot about playing poker.
He loves craps as well. And he's a great potter. A lot of people don't realise he actually makes pottery and has a website where he sells pottery.
Nice little plug.
Yeah. You can, Screaming Red Ass Pottery, that's the name of his company.
That's the name?
Screaming Red Ass Pottery. He said, I always wanted a company where people say, what's the name of your company? And I go, Screaming Red Ass. He gave me one of his hats.
So this was a scene that Carl wrote and sort of was, there's Mike right, that's Henry Cavill right there with the hat on. We were shooting one night and that's the problem with Romania. After a while there was, we became such a tight-knit group, there's not a lot to do if you're not in the mood for going back to your hotel and sleeping. Not that there's not a lot to do in the city.
Carl.
And that's Carl
Yeah,
Dupre.
there's Carl, yeah.
Carl was out. And
It's actually tradition, I have to say, for writers to play barman. Peter Atkins actually played a barman in Hellraiser 3. So it's kind of a tradition that the writer actually ends up playing a barman at some point in the Hellraiser mythos.
I think the scene was a little longer in conception, am I right? Or did it end up in its final form?
It was longer, I know, and what we shot. I think he circled the room a couple times, but I don't.
I always thought this was very eyes wide shut.
Yeah.
It's really, again, just beautiful, the work Cavi did. And we shot this, again, we were shooting. As a matter of fact, it laid out the scene that came right before with this Jake dropping the box, and we ran out of time, and I really, really wanted the scene. But actually, we actually talked about it, this was one scene that you really didn't need, and this could have been cut. Because it really doesn't advance the story at all. It's just a little bit of a nightmare for Jake, and he had the last one. And we saw him actually, come under the spell. But I really, really wanted the scene, and I'm so happy that we did. But we shot this in just, I don't know, maybe an hour or so, really tormenting the crew. And at one point they actually started, remember they turned the lights off?
Yes.
Because they all wanted to go home.
Oh, man.
That's their subtle hint. But this conceptually, we went through a whole bunch of changes on this all. Do you remember? We had different ideas about what would be creepy. Would they all just turn and look, or
This scene right
bodies, or-
here,
yeah.
when they're hanging, we had them looking, and then we ended up. This was how it was originally written, and we went back to it with the chains. And you shot all those guys, and men and women.
We had to shoot.
Actually, they were all standing on the floor, though. We had to actually take them off the floor digitally and make them sway a bit.
I just shot about 40 people against green one day.
The original conception of this, way back in the treatment, was very difficult to do in practical reality, but it's the sense of alienation where you come into a party and you're the only guy that just doesn't seem to belong, and every time you try to get somebody's attention, he'd turn them around, and their back would be to him still. So they're only backs, always.
I
It always sort of
I do remember
intrigued
that,
me,
yeah.
sort of a Dali-esque kind of weirdness.
Yeah, that would be.
Well, it'll actually fit right in with Jake too, because that's sort of his nightmare,
Right.
is that he's just sort of an outcast and doesn't really fit in. So it worked really well for his little nightmare right there. And this sequence just came up. We were just trying to come up with something. And I think we actually made him, obviously made him an asthmatic just for this particular scene that Carl came up with.
I think it's good.
And kicking this whole thing around at a party, just that we sort of were spitballing long distance one day and trying to come up with an idea of what he could do, and thought this was kind of cool imagery of somebody kicking your inhaler around on the floor. In this next sequence, I think I just want to apologize right up front. Yeah, this one. There's actually two of these sequences. There was this one and in Deader. It was coincidental, or I don't know,
I know
if
where
it's
you're
just
going.
if it's just the writer's mindset. But there was actually a scene very similar to this on Joey and the Train when Amy Klein, Kari Ware, was supposed to be talking to Joey. He was supposed to be filleted as he was talking.
Well, I thought you were going to apologise for using CGI and not the makeup that I did, but that's all right, I suppose.
Well, we couldn't do both of them. We ended up just keeping this one in, and it's kind of just a
Well, one
wink
of
and
the
a
other
gag.
things that was supposed to make that just a little disturbing was the fact that with the face mask
On her
up at
head.
one point, it was just a strange concept.
The eyes looking at you.
It is weird. It just in hindsight, I think obviously it goes on for way too long, but it's all to pay off this next moment when he sort of is sitting back and relaxing. Oh, we first go to this scene.
I don't have a problem with the scene going on too long.
No, Rick
myself.
obviously doesn't go on for too long for Rick. So
Yeah.
he thought he was stepping out of the bounds of reality, didn't you, Rick?
My wife just looks at it and just shakes her head. My husband, the director. And the payoff right here that Jameson put together, and I give him credit for putting together and for the time constraints and budget, but it always was wanted to be so much bigger, and just I mean it does work, but again, and it's always the frustration on these movies that you just have a certain budget, certain amount of time, and you just can't get everything across. So that one always was sort of like the beginning of what I wanted, but it's all that we really had the time and money for. But definitely there's so much more creativity that's behind everybody. It's just that your hands are tied, and nobody understands it more than Gary Tunnicliffe.
Because we did do a makeup on it. That he pulls the mask up and there's a makeup on it. And I know on the day, because you had tracking points on it, I was like, oh, I know what it's going to do.
Well, that particular day just sucked.
As long as you're
wasn't-
not bitter about it, Gary, you seem pretty well adjusted to the
I'm not
decision.
bitter at all.
Thankfully, 2 years have elapsed.
Yeah.
And I still bring the presents.
The wounds are still raw.
This is where I guess the previously existing Corey Payton headcast came into play. You had to give him a haircut, though.
Well, I have to be honest with you. This whole death sequence kind of was formulated on the day. Really, we thanks to Yanel Popper out there and everyone kind of lending a hand, we were able to hopefully pull it off. It was a tricky day.
I really like the scene. It really works. The music is great. Lars Anderson did the music for this, and this was a scene that we just had a lot of fun with. The thumping bass line. Then we just go into this sort of surreal moment here where he's catching his wind, and you think all is safe and all is forgiven here.
Mm-hmm.
And then the clincher comes up with Pinhead.
Well, you do that a couple other times too, Rick. Nicely, you sort of weave in those like speed rampy sort of
That was the trick.
shots.
Just
you know.
trying to get him onto the gurney, because we suddenly choreographed and realised we needed to get him onto the gurney, and it was like we need to get him on that gurney. He needs to stumble onto it, and luckily Corey was able to.
He did. We had to cut around. We kind of cut him over there because it looked very forced. You know, if you saw any one of these takes in their entirety, you'd see that he was really working his way. And there's Gary's hand. Obviously, didn't have Doug dress up for 4 hours for that, but
Light in that. It's lovely again, lighting. This is actually one of the first films I think ever where you actually saw, Pinhead get his hands dirty.
Yeah,
as it
actually
was,
kill
you know,
somebody.
He actually seen doing the deed. He was very proactive in this, which was awesome.
what we talked about going into
Yep.
it. Have some fun, make it bloody, but somewhat tongue-in-cheek. I mean, the violence is so over the top that it's almost kind of comical, but it's still somewhat scary.
Oh, it's great.
I think it worked out well,
Yeah.
Gary. It was a nice little kill there.
It is
There's Lance still digging.
still there.
You bastards.
Well, it was actually that shot you just saw. There was a crane over him. So he said, "Do you just mind for a few minutes just do a couple digging shots. No, not at all. And they're, okay, bring out the crane, guys.
Yeah.
Actually, one thing I wanted to add, looking at the lab, reminded me of something. I might be wrong, Joe, but I think the initial inspiration for the treatment that you wrote was that hospital we were at for Dracula years before, or no?
That room.
The back
Yeah.
room in the morgue.
house definitely was that sense of walking in on Dracula 2. I think Gary had discovered it. We were in a morgue, and Gary
Well,
was always
I have Morgdar, so I can find them anyway.
yeah, he does. His Morgdar was flaring up, and he just almost was like pushing through a fake wall or something. Something goes through this door, and we're in this other room of just jarred
Trepanned heads and hands, and
things,
skinned
just
bodies.
things you shouldn't see.
So I think that was the sort of initial idea. Am I right, Joe?
It was the inspiration
I took so many of those.
on this because you guys we saw that on the location scouts for Deader, and then we talked to Carl, and I said, you know, Gary, do you have enough stuff that we could sort of redesign that and rebuild that?
And I said, dead babies?
Oh,
Of course. Oodles of them. We were running them for weeks. We just moulded a couple and reconfigured them. This is at the top of the writer's house again, isn't it?
This actually was a location at the top of the guild up there, and we never thought we wanted to build this, but we just at that time didn't have the time or money to do it, so we actually shot, and it was really crickety up there.
Yeah, only a
creaky.
few people
Yeah,
were
just a
allowed
few
in at any time
people.
because the floor was so unsafe, which isn't really the most nice thing to hear.
No.
Sorry, you can't go on. Why? The floor might collapse. Okie dokie then. I'll be outside.
This, by the way, happens almost every time I'm out at a party. It's just so strange.
You too?
Yeah, you walk into a bedroom
And
and
a nun
it's
comes out naked?
So annoying, yeah.
Or Gary.
Well, I've still got my nun outfit. So.
This girl that I met, we did have to cast, and you're sort of limited because you need somebody that would do the nudity. And I remember her name was Alex. I don't remember her last name, but she did a great job. I mean, for somebody that had no acting skills at all, she came out and had to be on camera and work through a lot of stuff with Christopher, and they did a nice job. I like this little touching sequence in here with all the ingredients. I mean, you know, it's any good horror film. You've got the blood, the guts, the horror, the scares, and then there's got to be the sex, the TNA, and here it is.
We managed to fit it all in.
Yeah, so to speak.
You squeezed it all in.
What are we, a bunch of 10-year-olds here?
Well, I'm
Yes.
11, but yeah. I make no apologies at all.
But again, you know, any sequence, you can look at the content and enjoy or not enjoy it, offended, whatever. But just from cinema, it's so beautiful. Gabby did such a great job lighting it. The score behind it with Lars is gorgeous, and it's a nice little relief from the story. And all plays into Jake's nightmares. He finally has somebody he can relate to, and then she disappears and is gone as he wakes up.
Yeah, Jake gets pretty played with throughout the course of this, I guess.
It was one of his better nightmares, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Damn good.
If you're going to have one,
I'll have
it's the
what
one
he's
to
having.
have. Yeah, I'll take 2 of those, please. Vicar.
And this sequence, which we'll
Yes.
see later more, this is the story in itself. This was a stage that we built, a little set, a 3-walled
Not
set
even
we
a
built.
stage, yeah.
Yeah, we built
Middle.
a 3-walled set in the middle of a field out at Castell Films in the studio. And the reason we built exterior is because we wanted. Why did we build exterior?
Fire gag.
We wanted the fire. That's what it was.
Set fire to
We
the
had to
chap.
set fire.
And that's not a rain bar.
Yeah,
That is actually, we were standing, I think, knee deep in just mud and
Hardcore.
rain outside shooting this 3-walled set. It's supposed to be Adam's basement.
It worked well because the elements just, you know, we got steam and condensation when he's breathing, and we had the real rain. It actually be raining and just freezing that night. It was a real miserable
It was,
shoot.
it was cold.
But look at the payoff. It's excellent.
No, yeah, I think this scene actually worked out really
Real
well.
well. We actually, that shot of the box coming up, because actually when he looked up, how it was shot and originally cut was he looked up and he's looking at Pinhead, and that first cut of the box, we thought when we were cutting it, we slugged in a picture, or just, you know, of an insert of a box from another shot, because it sort of came to us then. So that was on our list. That shot of the box was shot when we came back in the springtime.
Allison, thank God.
There was actually a mark on the floor, and I don't know if it's either, I think Jameson removed it, or we just, at high angle, looked down onto a trivia.
Don't worry about Alice. You'll see her again. Sooner than you think.
great how Lance just sort of permeates the whole movie too. You know, he's not in every scene, but his presence is definitely there.
This song was actually found by Melanie Miller, and who was the music coordinator on this, and went out and had the hard job of finding all the different, because I think there's about 15 or 20 cuts of music that we used for this, and again, had very little money to pay the artist for it. So she brought just bundles and bundles and boxes of CDs of music that we could afford, and we just went through and happened to find this one, and we heard it and said, wow, this fits in really nice. So we cut a little montage to it here.
That is a heck of a party.
Rick always amazed me the amount of coverage he would get in a day. Whereas most people would get like 18, maybe 22, 25, even 30 shots sometimes. This guy was constantly getting 40 and just making everybody else look bad.
There's Dave.
I was
we
just
have
going
to
to
speak
say
about Dave.
I was just going to say the thing of note in this scene here is the gentleman on the right, the cop, is a contest winner
Dave
from
Robinson.
England, Dave Robinson. We actually did an interview with him for the DVD. I hope they put it on there. But he won a contest. I think it was called the Scariest Man in England or
That's
Scariest
right,
Man in
yeah.
Britain. And he was absolutely just thrilled to be there. Just a huge Hellraiser fan, and was really psyched to do just this little walk-on part. I mean, he was just absolutely hysterical. He was a really nice guy.
Are you telling me this was the prize for winning the contest?
Is a walk-on role in
No, the
Hellraiser?
first prize was my job. he got first runner-up.
Dave actually went on to when I met him and we became friends. He said, he formed a website for me. He does www.garyjtunnicliffe.com in the UK, and he runs that. It's like a fan site. So it's he's great. I still speak to Dave all the time.
Yeah, he was really
He
cool.
loved it. He just loved being on it. He was great.
This was always one of my favorite moments in the movie too. Just that helpless, sort of terrifying feeling of being right there and having somebody look at you, seeing them look at you, and just not registering.
Cut up and she's not. It really scared me because it read. I always felt it read better than it was going to be able to be executed. And I like this scene. Everything I look at, I always feel like I would have done something different, but it was a challenge just because it's all created in cuts because she's just banging on the window and he's down there and we tied it all together by that look right there is so great.
Yeah,
Lance gives.
Because he's the only one who knows.
Yeah.
And she actually, on these days, on the couple days shooting this scene, obviously had lost her.
Her voice. That's right. Yeah, she couldn't speak at all.
Yeah.
You wouldn't know it. She dubbed it. Did a great job.
So if you look at any of the dailies or anything, she's just absolutely hoarse.
And that was a cold night as well.
Yeah.
We actually put in. I think there's on the gag reel because she smacked out. She broke a window or something. And I think she sort of whispers something.
Yeah.
There's another. Those are just those little cuts that you add in. I put in 6 months later. He's smoking a cigarette.
Yeah, everybody's smoking.
That look just cracks me up because I just love that he's smoking a cigarette and then he hacks on it.
Henry's a comedy actor. He really could do some great comedy. He was a funny guy.
He was a lot of fun. And again, the look on this stuff, something we got away with because it was just going into fantasy and it's all just an illusion in their own minds that we did a lot of camera tricks and speed ramps and slow downs and so got away with it.
Flash framing, everything. Yeah, you did it all.
There was something with this actor. I
Yeah,
can't remember.
I was going to say Victor.
We brought him over and he just...
He's an English guy, isn't he?
He did a nice job, but I can't remember. There was something he just was not very cooperative, and we wanted to have him back, and he didn't want to come back or something, and it was... I don't remember how it affected us.
We split his work up over like 2 weeks, and he just refused to come back at one point.
Just goes to show you should only hire contest winners.
Yeah.
That's right.
Dave would have come back for anything.
Or studio executives.
Or studio
also are
execs,
game to play police officers.
You didn't make a play here, though, did you, Nick?
No. I don't know if Rick was as willing to work with the studio executives.
I did.
Patrick was.
I'm in this one, you know.
Are you, Gary? Because I haven't seen
Here's
it.
the irony of this one, and I'll get through it quickly so that Rick can talk, but I'm in Deader, at the beginning of Deader, as a journalist.
Yes.
And at the very end of this film, there's a shot of a wide angle, and I'm as a reporter actually filling in some stuff. I'm at the scene of
Could be the same guy.
Same journalist.
Well, it's the same guy. That was my big through line, you know.
Recurring role.
But Nick, you never... Did you
No,
have any
no,
express interest in
I'm
this
just.
one? Except in the scene, you wanted to
I
double
wanted to
Henry.
double Henry in this
Environmental.
scene. Yeah.
This film's a bit steamy, actually, Rick. I've got to give it to you. It's a bit horny. This film is, isn't it? It's a bit randy. You know what I mean? I think
Okay, I want to give a little tip of the hat to our producer Ron Schmidt, who makes his second unit directorial debut with this shot right there,
Ron Schmidt.
and this shot right there, and there.
Schmidt.
That's it. Ron
Excellent.
Schmidt. Ron, who produced Hellseeker and Deader, is just a great guy, great producer, and a good man to have around. And we had a lot of fun.
He's a good guy.
We spent a lot of good nights together, working and
Easy.
socializing.
We don't know about your personal life.
He shoots some good pool too.
He does.
He does.
A mean game of 3-ball. In
That-
Champions.
I love that moment right there where he kind of goes, "Rawr," and the door just closes in his face. You're right. Henry's got a couple of nice comedy moments
Henry's
here in
got-
this movie.
He does.
He can do it.
He's got a great career ahead of him.
I so wish he'd have got Superman. I'm sure he does, but I was really rooting for him on that.
Also, a scene like this too, you gotta look at all the different elements that make up the sequence and the sound design on this movie and the execution of it by the guys over at Monkeyland, where we are doing this
Monkeyland.
commentary. Yeah. Steve Avila, who did the sound design on Deader and on Hellworld, just spent hours and hours and hours just sifting through these effects and just layering them, and I would come in, and I'm not really easy on these guys, so I pushed them harder and harder and just kept wanting more and more, and we probably went well beyond what the budget called for, but these guys are just real team players over here, and it really shows up in a scene like this where it's just a lot of quiet, and it's just, if you listen to this, it's just all sound design.
It's a good kill sequence.
This was one of those nightmares where you maybe go and get real animal guts, and put them into a body, you swine.
We only got away with it because we were in Romania.
It's like, I want real thing. Go and get some sheep's insides and stuff. It's like, oh no.
That one shot you have to really appreciate us 2 shots ago when you looked up and there's the real guts. But they do. Do you see how they jiggle when they opened it? I know you could
Gotta
have made
go the
something.
extra distance.
You gotta. But I just wanted to look. We looked up and we saw a skylight up there.
Ain't got nobody. Sorry.
You shot all this stuff with my hands. But Christy designed this wonderful skylight that we were gonna always link in from the dance floor above to the thing below, and he built this giant, gorgeous skylight.
was
And
awesome.
unfortunately, that's the only shot that you see it in.
You see a little bit in some of the
Don't
others.
worry, Rick. We
Yeah.
Did you use it?
used it and broke it in the next
In Prophecy 5, you see it plenty. So.
There we go. I don't feel so bad now.
This is great.
Just to give you a nice jolt of self-esteem, Rick, when I used to work in the New York office, Bob Weinstein's office is right next to mine, and I could hear him watching. I don't know if he's watching the movie in its entirety or just scenes or whatever, but he absolutely loved this scene. He was howling. Thought it was a great kill scene, thought it was well done. I could hear him through the wall just slapping his knee and loving it.
This is a fun
Very
sequence.
well orchestrated because it builds to certain little plateaus and then it lets off a little and then takes you back up to the next level. And
This was actually on paper. What's also I was really anxious to shoot this when I knew we were going to have a lot of fun with this, and we spent, I think, the most time on this particular scene of any of the kill sequences.
45 minutes?
We gave this one an hour. I think this was.
Sweet.
It's band.
Well,
And then who was that right there, Gary?
It's a combination actually. Mike Regan played it, and I played band as well at the end. So I mean, we both played band at certain times. But
Now, has Band been in other...
band actually turned up in Hellseeker, but he was kind of female, and now he's more.
Was that his debut, Hellseeker?
Yes.
And then what about Spike?
So well, Spike.
Whatever-
Spike's only in DVD.
Does Band have an action figure yet?
Bound. This is Bound. Yes. No, he hasn't been action figurized yet. Oh, and there's Big Penny.
Is that guy?
just the beginning.
Doug's great. You gotta love Doug Bradley.
Mm-hmm.
There's no one else.
We hung and swung Henry there for many
We
hours,
did.
and he was. That was not comfortable. As soon as I look at this now, I start remembering this sequence. We shot this little run of hers started at the beginning of the schedule here. She's very comfortable here. You can actually see some of the mist in the air. It was a nice, warm, well, a balmy night.
And then it went to
and
minus
she
6.
takes off here, and we shot here at the end of the schedule. And I'm telling you, you can see the snow on the ground.
Freezing.
It
Minus
was
6.
oh,
Minus
Really?
And she's running around in this tank top or whatever, this sleeveless shirt, and she was absolutely just dying.
Well, to be quite honest, the double who did the double of running got pneumonia and spent 3 days in hospital because I went and visited her.
Oh my God.
The double who did the running, Donna, actually got pneumonia.
This one?
Yeah.
Catherine's a real. Took a lot of endurance actually to continue on this because Lance didn't have any. If I recall, he had a little. Remember that he got a little attitude. We were out
Screw
there.
that. Fucking cold. I'll be in the casino.
And the fire to fire, sort of
Yeah.
the story unfolds here of Jake and his remembrance of putting the pieces together in terms of Adam. And this is the fire sequence. Now I recall why we shot this outside, but here he picks up the fire and we're going to set himself ablaze. And this, while it works, I don't think we touched this up.
Real gasoline as well. Like, the Romanians were very, the props had to be real, and we're like, no, not real gasoline. Doesn't have to be. So,
Well, he douses himself here, and we didn't have a lot of the stuff we would like to have had. So we had this great big fire suit on him, which I think you can look through the flames and pretty easily see it.
Oh, actually.
And actually, wasn't it? It was from Mimic. It was
the
Mimic.
head of the
That's
fire
great.
suit is the cockroach head
Right
from
there.
Mimic right
from
there.
Mimic, yeah. Oh, you really can't see it. I think
You
we
can't
tweaked
see
it
it.
now.
so all we got was the, silicon head.
And then Jameson added the CG fire effect when he puts the candle originally directly to his chest.
I screw it all up, and Jameson saves the day. It's always
Exactly.
the way. That's your double. That was Donna.
This guy, this cop was another example of a local who had very little grasp on the English language, and we ended up looping.
We couldn't find anybody. I actually at one point thought about playing this part, and I just couldn't do it because I ain't no
I
actor.
thought it was Nick Cage. No?
Looks.
I think you'd have been.
This could happen to you. But he did a good job in the audition, and we just thought he was going to get a better understanding. But he's one of these guys that comes out here, I think we talked about in Deader, where he learned
He tried.
the dialogue.
Yeah.
He didn't speak any English and just learned his lines. But we ended up filling it in with another actor.
Doug complained that this was the coldest he'd ever been on a film set in his entire life.
This was the cold night, the coldest night.
My hell.
He always says that, at the end of this take, Rick said freeze, and I was like, yes, I am freezing.
We had those little trailers with heaters in them right off camera, and literally we'd do a take, cut, they'd run, jump in. And this was something that Carl came up with because it was a really sort of a weird part in the story where she runs out of the house, and we needed her to run out to go jump into Pinhead and to find the host out here, and then we need to chase her back in. So we came up with this design that Jake calls her back in and pleads for help, and then I think you can catch it that it was actually the host.
It's also worth pointing out that was shot at Snagoff, which is like 35 miles away from the house. So it was all tied together by the same, by linking it.
It's a nice shot, too.
Great architecture in this old house.
Back in the writer's house.
It was so great. Again, Gabby, she had such a great use of composition and as operators. I can't remember. Alex was the operator, but
Alex, yeah.
I mean, with my background too, I was pretty forceful in what I wanted, but these guys just came up with these great compositions and camera placements and lighting design by Gabby. Real enjoyable experience.
Chelsea!
Jimmy, are you okay? What happened?
No, I'm fine.
This scene right here,
What are you talking about?
I think, is Catherine's best performance of the movie.
Anyone? Have you?
No.
Well, the rest of the movie becomes a lot about these two and them sort of figuring out what's going on. This is where everything just sort of starts going to shit for them.
And the realization is now starting to hit them, and then they basically prove the point in the next two scenes coming up, up in the attic, and Jake in the lair of the host.
Yeah, I mean, keep cutting back to that shot. It's such a great one, shooting down through that little hole.
I remember this because Gabby, I'm a big fan of soft light, and I generally don't not a fan of shadows and hard shadows, but Gabe said, this is the perfect scene for it.
Mm-hmm.
Hard light right up to there and put those shadows all over her, and I fought it, and looking at it was the right thing to do. It was a great call. Is that Gary or Mike?
That's Mike Regan, Chatterer.
Chatterer.
Yes. Very popular with
And
the
then here
Hellraiser
comes
fans.
comes Henry.
Great party, that's a great line. And great makeup.
Yeah, these are tricky because these are supposed to be like pseudo Cenobites. They're not full Cenobites, but they're kind of, you know. And these are all generic appliances. We had no idea what actors were playing them, so they were literally sculpted on generic busts. And luckily, everything.
But it worked well
you
because
know.
Allison had the voice box. I think you knew that, didn't you?
No, we knew. Yeah, we knew what they
yeah.
were going to do, and we kind of sliced, Henry's face up. So.
This actually was, I mentioned earlier that we shot this on location, and we could only shoot it because we couldn't get lights outside, and I wanted those windows to be blue. So we only had about a 20-minute window for the windows. And we just, again, it's not exaggeration. It really was, this film was shot in 20 days or 22 days. I don't remember the schedule, but...
And 6-day weeks and, long days, long nights.
This is another set that Christie built. It was attached to another set. They had that
The Dracula.
in the... Was it Dracula?
Was in the Dracula
Yeah.
set.
So we took one corner of it and redesigned it and made this attic upstairs.
Dracula's castle set, yeah. Because it's got all that great wood.
That pigeon is terrified about 18 different heroines.
Well, he's terrified himself because he worked in Mimic Sentinel. So,
We did. I think a pigeon wrangler just became sort of standard on any budget we do over there. We use a pigeon wrangler in Mimic, Prophecy, this.
I
everything.
talked to that pigeon on Mimic 3. He just said, I finally hit the wall. I couldn't go any further.
He was burned out.
Yeah.
He's like Brando now. He just lives somewhere in seclusion.
he's curtsed.
No, I think he is like Brando.
I think he is. I think Rick too a lot. I remember from working on just trying to work on the story. A lot of the challenge of these later scenes, is it's a lot of sort of people talking on the phone. But I think you managed to sort of bring a nice sense of urgency to it, and there's a way to sort of weave information through it, effectively. And I think that was a challenge that we were pretty aware of.
Come to the party. Come to the party.
We wanted to just tell a little bit of story and that this was the host and that she's picking up on it and starting to put it together, but also it was an opportunity to sort of flush out some of the Hellraiser mythology, and when she refers to him that you're gonna rip off your head and Pinhead's gonna appear. This scene worked out really well. I like this kind of a little emotional sequence where he thinks that he's killed her and she goes down.
I like this scene. I thought it was cool.
Tricky little shot right here to execute. It took quite a while to pull.
Had a good jet on this one, I remember.
I love the blood squirt. Yeah, squirt.
I'm on the floor just behind the desk.
Yeah.
About to get crushed by Catherine. Don't fall on me.
Again, from a performance standpoint, we shot this, the close-up leading up to it one day, and then we ran out of time in this sequence here, the two close-ups we had to come back to a week or two later. Just when we found time, because we didn't make the day, and obviously you have to come up with this to make this whole thing work. So we had to find schedule someplace down the road later on, and the actors got to get geared back up for it. And
Yeah, I'd always sort of like that surreality of it at this point in the movie where the power of suggestion starts to come into play and you don't really know what's real and what's not. I think that's something that Joel had touched on in the original treatment, and then I think Carl and Rick, you guys just sort of ran with it.
it's inherent in all of the Hellraisers. I mean, right back to the original, where it's just seemingly reality is not, and that's part of the effects of the box once you open it up. Personally, I started to get burned out on it because it's such a cheap way and an easy way to get all these garish images in. Something terrible happens, and then it
was all a dream.
It was all a dream.
Right.
And essentially, that's the overall story in this one. Is it was all a dream, but it was a little bit more tangible here. That it was a dream, but we sort of gave reason to it when we pulled them out of the coffins at the end.
Yeah, there's just a different spin to it this time, I think. Was that library scene that Chris is in? Was that a set or was that a?
That's at the house.
It is, right?
Writer's
Yeah.
house, yeah.
It's a nice little room too.
I mean, it's always great shooting on real locations like that, but the problem is for the crews that, everyone has to kind of come in, do their touches, and then kind of get outside and be quiet. So, for every scene you see like that, there's 30 people sitting outside a room kind of going, are they rolling? Are they finished? Are they done? Can I get in and touch makeup up? Or, And they were pretty small rooms. So.
Again, he touched upon that. We talked about earlier, but we talked about this earlier in Deader, you and I. But talking on the sets and locations, just it was one of the challenges here because for a good many people spoke English. But did you find that too, Joel? I mean, you actually mastered the language to some degree.
I never mastered it, but I started to get a little bit of a facility for it. But it is hard. But after a while, you get into a rhythm, especially like on your second one. It's a groove. And, they're still pros. They get it.
They do get it. It's just a challenge, though, because you take it for granted when you walk onto a set. It's kind of like being on a cell phone when you're talking to somebody and it seems like you go on this, now, let me just tell you this great story, and then you go off in 3 minutes and you say, hello?
Yeah.
Right.
Hello? So I get this great idea, this great notion on a scene, and you just pour your hearts out, and you're saying, that's what I want. Does everybody understand? And you get these blank eyes, and then the translator steps up, and you go, oh, yeah, they weren't really understanding that. But you're right, you do get into a groove. And
I think at the end, everybody ends up, sort of getting what they want.
I found myself with the kind of choices and suggestions that were brought to the table more often pleasantly surprised than unpleasantly surprised.
Absolutely.
Always.
Mm-hmm.
This is the Sixth Sense moment, isn't it?
Yeah.
yeah, this is him putting it all together. And
Right.
we actually shot each one of these sequences 2 ways. We shot both scenes. We did one normal, and then we jumped ahead knowing this scene would take place. We then shot the same scene either high speed or with a heavy filtration. We sort of, I think we put some diffusion out around the outside on a filter. I was going to say Vaseline, but I just know it's...
What kind of filters
You
tend to go
suggesting
with?
I would say something if you said Vaseline?
I'm sorry. What kind of filters were you going for usually?
And it was minimal, but I think on a couple of those sequences, like in all the flashback sequences, we sort of made it dreamy. We probably upped the soft effects or the fog filter or something. But I think we did smear some Vaseline on the edges on the outside just to give it...
Oh, on the camera. Sorry.
I don't even have to look to the other end of the table to know.
Just in the headphones, I hear his
Just for-
tongue.
Just letting you know. During this commentary, Joel and Nick are at one end of a table, and me and Rick are huddled together at the other end. So it's like
Easy there, Tiger.
you're the one with your hand on my knee. So that's not your hand.
Oh, this was crazy, yeah, where he's under the floorboards. I always thought this was pretty wild.
Excellent.
Great cut right there. Tony Ayler cut this movie again with me. We did 3 movies together. We did Hellseeker and then Deader and Hellworld. Tony's a lot of fun to work with and comes up with some great ideas, but some of these sequences are so tricky, and we just worked and worked and reworked, and so I admire his patience because he would come up with some ideas, and then I would come up with some, and then we would just shape and reshape and work and work and work.
I feel like maybe a little more so than Deader. I think there was a lot of stuff that sort of came out of this movie. Am I right? I feel like there was a couple sequences that we ended up taking out, or am I reversing the movies?
Actually, we
This
took...
one more than Deader. I feel like there's a couple things that we had to take out, whether in script or editing phase.
I know we shortened some things. There was a couple scenes, that scene we were talking about earlier when Jake walked up into that room,
Right.
and it's the...
Because we were thinking about taking that out
We
entirely.
did,
We
and
did
actually
at
that's
one point.
to Joel's credit, because I remember I took it out of... I didn't even put it into my first director's cut, and I think one of the first things you said, because Joel was a fan of the movie when very early on and a big supporter of it, but I remember one of the first things you said was, "Where's that scene?" And I just didn't feel like it fit. We didn't feel like we need it.
Well, it's an interesting thing, Rick, because a lot of movies are improved by upcutting. In fact, usually that's the case. And a very few films actually, I think, almost work better in their first state. Like your instincts the first time around were solid, and then you almost start to second guess
You
certain
do, yeah.
things. And I think we ended up, if I'm not mistaken, restoring some of the things back into the movie to make it work better.
We did. We cut that, and there's another sequence somewhere else that
Yeah.
cut out and shortened.
Yeah.
Some of the things, though, and it's for me, I don't know how you feel, Joel, but after looking at things a year later, in this case 2 years later, but there's so much tightening I would have done.
No, I get that feeling too when I
Big
look at
time.
stuff I've been involved in.
But that's really just from you guys sitting in the edit room watching it over and over again. You know what's coming next so much that you know.
Mine's actually based on the people yawning watching it.
Yeah. I have to give a tip of the hat to for the design of the Adam Byrne makeup to Greg Canham. It kind of based it loosely on the Mason Verger makeup, which I thought was excellent. So
We did talk about that, yeah.
yeah, we did. We wanted to do a Byrne makeup, and I thought that was a great makeup. So we kind
How long did that take? I mean,
we sculpted each piece about 20 minutes, but to apply it was about 3 hours.
There's Catherine's roundhouse.
Kicks Lance's ass.
Oh yeah.
Didn't always strike me as a very organic
No,
moment.
that was
but-
pretty forced. That was one of those moments when we went back, but we sort of locked ourselves in with the dialogue there, because I
Yeah.
tried cutting that out, but it shows off her athletic prowess.
It does.
And now just all shit hits the fan, and
Yeah.
coming up to the big sequence of,
I love that when Lance says, "Boop."
yeah.
You can tell he's having fun with it, you know?
He had some different takes on that, didn't he, Rick?
Actually, that scene that we used, him laughing there, was actually in between. We were we get a couple pieces, and we just kept the camera rolling, and that laugh was, I think, to somebody, something had said, and it seemed so honest we used it.
The location of these mounds of dirt mysteriously moves around too.
Yeah, we did. What was that?
This scene was shot in one
Yeah,
place,
we
and
did.
then
We changed it.
we changed the location to, I think, the other side. Not the other side. I mean, it's not that far away, but it was just more of, you know, it was sort of
Oh, from this to the end.
necessitated
From
by, you know,
You're right.
schedule and time and, you know,
Just looking
proximity
at-
to highways.
No,
and
actually, you
things
know
like
what it was? This was in the back of that house, or however it worked out. But, and then in the scene to follow, when they're in the daytime scene, when the police are pulling them out of the graves, the house is so prominently featured in the background that this was the best angle of the house
Yeah.
at night, and the other angle was
Right.
the best angle of the house in the day. So we did move the graves.
I just remembered something watching this actually about Lance, was the fact that, for those of you out there who probably don't realise this, Lance's ears are actually glued to his head. Lance wanted to look like we said, I want to look like a wolf, and kind of very streamlined.
Oh, a Doberman.
A Doberman. So he glued his ears. His ears were glued to his head every day by Yonel Popper.
But you didn't dock him, did
And he
you?
had a very small scar on him as well, but they didn't dock them.
You know, give him the little
Clip.
pointy-
No, he just glued them.
And I think he just wanted to, because he said that, I think he felt that the kids would have noticed him and recognized him as the father of Adam. So that was his disguise now.
And we changed his hair as well. I mean, Lance has almost got white hair now.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, his hair colour has changed, but his ears are glued to his head.
It's funny how you get used to that, because I remember the first day, the first scene. In fact, they're not glued, but you can't really tell him. That first scene when he got off the plane we talked about earlier. But I think the first dialogue scene he came on, and I'm looking at him going, your ears are glued. I said, why are your ears glued? Oh, this is the thing, it's a choice I made. I didn't really agree with it, but I said it doesn't really affect me one way or the other. And now I don't even recognize, I don't realize it.
It only occurred to me, so when I was watching him thinking, well, his ears are very streamlined, you know.
I'm sorry, Rick, were you futzing with the camera lens on that?
Yeah, I like the
To get
interior
that sort
coffin
of
stuff.
blurry flare thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, that we did. We actually,
A loose.
we took the lens out of the turret. We just loosened the lens, and as the camera's rolling, we just were basically popping it out and popping in, so you get that right there.
Yeah.
That's a really interesting
quick.
effect.
Yeah. And the edges are sort of, the edges of the shot are blurry. as
Because you're
well.
changing the plane of the
Yeah.
focus.
I just think this whole sequence is brilliant. I always loved it.
I like this sequence because it really is a dangerous and a frightening sequence to enter, because in the script it just read as the host telling the story. He's telling it to them and telling it to the viewer of what exactly happened, because it is a little bit convoluted, or it just
Well,
was
we'd always worried about
a
that
little
on the
cryptic.
page.
Yeah. So we knew that and we were always hesitant about and wondering is there any other scene we can do to flesh this out? And this is what we came up with. We just had this big tale of the host telling the kids what had happened. And so I just came up with this notion of just making it really visual and just going really quick cutting and all these different camera tricks here just to keep it visually exciting, upcut it as quick as we could, scary music, great imagery, picking all the best, and then just trying to get through it as quick as possible. And it ended up being a real long sequence, and I think it's pretty fun.
It works. It really works. I love this.
And Catherine was a trooper here. I mean, she's like eating dirt.
Yeah.
It looks
Yeah,
like a
she
bizarre
was.
episode of Fear Factor right
Yeah,
now. You know what I
yeah.
mean?
And this is all part of Lance's first evening
Right
on
there.
set where he had to dig ditches.
And build coffins. We just made him build those. Remember, we left the wood
Yeah.
there and said,
I think you're
you
absolutely right.
build some
I
coffins?
think he was just wearing the clothes he was wearing on the plane. It just stepped right off. We don't waste any time. We put you right to work. We get to go back and see all the cast.
I love that buzzing with the dirt on it.
Yeah. This was a good cast, by the way. Of all the movies that we did over there, for as long as we spent in Romania, this was a good group of people that we
really
spent
was.
some good time with on and off the set. Just had a lot of fun with.
But the spirit of the...
Uses
yeah,
that
this-
particular image to
I did notice that over that sentence was an image of sex. But not that kind of fun.
really? Oh, me neither.
But the spirit of the film, I think, came across, and their interaction on camera and off just helped out, because it is a sort of, as
They
I
bonded.
said, yeah, it wasn't the real. Hopefully, it's scary and dramatic, and it all works. But it also was our attempt at being a little bit more lighthearted and light-handed at a look
Deader
at-
was pretty.
We always
heavy.
said in the
Yeah.
very beginning it was like a fan film for fans of the film,
Yeah.
you know. So it was much more kind of, with its tongue firmly in its cheek at times, but
That's
it's still
great.
scary and,
Yeah, that we were actually moving that. That's not a CG effect. We were actually just moving the lens. We unseated it and just moved it around. So you're basically controlling the image on the film. But yeah, Gary and I, we spoke about this before. I mean, all of us, we would always say, if you are a true fan and you're actually listening to this, but we do think of the fan as we're making these movies. Well, this is who we're making it for, and let's make a good film and let's make it fun. But what would the fans like to see? What would they like to watch? What would they like to feel?
Mm-hmm.
And I know that it goes into your design as well, because you have to stay true to them with the design of the box and the design of the creatures.
well, I think, you're always, you're kind of damned if you do and damned if you don't, to be
Yeah.
quite honest with Hellraiser films, You just can't win, so you just, you have to make a film for yourself at the time, which I know you. But I think you did an amazing job, because Deader and Hellworld could not be two different films.
Absolutely.
They're so very different.
That transitional cut, by the way, Rick, I think that's the whole crux of the scene, is where he's bringing the shovel down to kill her, and it becomes her salvation.
Yeah.
This is great.
And I remember shooting this that
Screaming
morning. I
her
mean,
guts
she was
out,
just
yeah.
going crazy.
Yeah, we did this all on stage right here, all the inner
It was
box.
like,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
left-hand side,
Yeah.
and right-hand
Right.
side, and left-hand side.
That was all obviously staged, but when they pull her out, I mean, they really pulled
Oh,
her out
yeah,
of
yeah.
a
Yeah,
The
yeah.
friggin' hole in
transition
the
to
ground.
here.
She was pretty freaked out.
She did a good job. And all the other coffins being hoisted out, and then
Yeah, this-
seeing the actual. So she and Jake are the only two survivors, and then we can see the others that all scared themselves. And I think the host actually talked about it. He died of a heart attack, and Derek had an asthma attack, asphyxiated, and then
We did like wood shavings on him from when he's thrown up, and he's got blood on his knuckles, and she's ripped her own throat out.
Oatmeal poisoning.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this was a funny morning to shoot as well, because everybody's walking around with their, white contacts, and Anna
Yeah,
Tolpa's
can't
walking around with her
see.
neck prosthetic. It was just kind of funny to see all these people just traipsing around in their death makeup.
We wanted 5 or 6 police cars in the background, and again, remembering this is upstate New York, we needed American-made
ones.
cars. So we said, I think if there's 2 cop cars back there. We wanted 5. The other 2 are some European ambulances.
That's why you put me in it, because she said, I like your coat. Can you go and walk around in your coat? Because your coat looks very American.
But what was really funny is they came out and they said, yeah, we'll have 2 cars out there. And then when they had the tow trucks bring them in, he said, oh, you wanted them to run, because I wanted them to drive in. And they were just shells. They were like just shells of cars.
Have we seen you yet, Gary?
I don't know. I'm waiting. Maybe I'm in it. Maybe I'm not. I don't know.
By the way, another note of in terms of costume and cops and stuff is that those are all, I think, NYPD.
There I am. Look.
There he is, to the right.
It's the reporter who's in the Deader as well.
He's getting the scoop.
That's right. He's the only character who survives both films. Oh, that was hilarious.
We have to make a spin-off about that reporter.
That's it.
You should wander around with a notepad and just make some notes.
Nick, you were obsessing on the cars in the background.
Yeah,
We
if
just
you
cou-
look at these shots here,
Yeah,
you
there's
see
cars.
cars in the background.
and we just couldn't. We just didn't have the cuts
No.
to support without it.
I just thought maybe you should just favor her, but you really had to
Well,
start.
I think we did. We
obviously cut back and forth.
Yeah, we tweaked them out. We tried, and I never saw it until I.
No, I just never saw it till now.
Yeah.
It's a great shot.
Yeah, I like that shot of Catherine there.
The way this has got the short focus on it, so that only her face is in focus, but the rest
It's
of it.
yeah, it's real pretty.
That's great.
And she looks up to the image of Adam, who is now sort of a
Ghost.
friendly ghost, who guided them to safety. Yeah, this is the other side of the house.
Mm-hmm.
There's an example of, I love the imagery, such a pretty shot, but as I'm looking at it now, I could have cut out 2 of those.
Oh. There he is, the reporter.
I have to laugh, I'm sorry. It's just hilarious. Oh, dear.
This shot right here, the Clark Hotel, is a stock shot that we pulled, and it was actually a shot that I was an operator on in like 1987 on a movie called Tap.
Nice.
Really?
Yeah, we shot
Gregory
that.
Hines?
And it just showed in, they said, we got your stock shot with Gregory Hines, and I looked at that movie.
And you were the operator, huh?
I was the
That's
operator.
hilarious.
And I just
Hilarious.
saw that, and I saw that, and it would when we put it in, Tony cut it in, and I thought, oh, I remember that shot. I thought, wait a second.
You know what, Lance? He's great at smoking. He's one of the best smokers
Yeah.
in a film ever. He really looks like he's
smokes.
enjoying it. He
Yeah.
sucks it
Smokes
right
his
into his
ass
boots. You feel the smoke going down into his
He
legs.
smokes in every scene he's in this movie, pretty much.
Yeah.
He's an avid smoker.
Well, this is kind of a weird sequence because I wanted to give the host, he just had his retributions, and now he's gotten away, but we don't want to get him away scot-free. But there's this little moment we sort of go in and we gave it some really sweet music to give the guy like a little sweet moment, and we actually pulled back at one point. We had just too soft of a music that you almost felt sorry for the guy.
It's a great look from that. I was like, yeah.
But this whole sequence is actually just to give him his comeuppance.
Mm-hmm.
The guilty must suffer.
Yeah,
It's the law.
that's it.
There are 3 laws to a horror film. The guilty must suffer, the innocent must survive, and decapitation. And a hero
That's the
must
rule.
taste blood to become a man.
And
That's
here it is.
Those
Just
are the,
decapitation.
those are the Sam Raimi rules of horror.
This is a great kill sequence, by the way.
Welcome to hell. This is not happening. Seeing is believing.
We just couldn't resist once we found we had Lance Hendrickson with Carl, so we talked about some type of a decapitation or a body severing, so we
Homage
could
to
make
Bishop.
a subtle homage to Bishop in the Alien films, and Lance was nice enough to never say.
He loves that stuff.
He,
Like
He does.
totally
He loves
did.
that stuff.
He does, and he's so recognized for it. One night at the casino in the hotel, there was a new dealer who comes up to the table, and he points at Lance. She just goes, "Bishop." It's the only word I think he can get out in English. He just points right at him. Bishop.
Or drawing those blades up and getting them, cut out of steel on the day.
They were great.
They worked out very well.
Again, these slices here, I wish we just had more. We just had all the talent, but we just didn't have the time and the money to just make that and this a little bit more visceral.
That is a death.
Mm-hmm.
That's a
And right
Cenobite
there-
death. Jameson going.
Jameson in the bonus material, I think there's a little how we did it that Jameson walks us through on that. The sequence there in the springtime, we came back and shot this, and we cut inside, and I think we're in the snow. Yeah. Because we shot this back in the winter, and then came back and reshot in the spring.
This ending here sort of had 2 incarnations. Am I right?
Yeah, we did. We were going to shoot 2 different versions. And we did shoot 2 different
Yes.
versions. And we did show both versions. And I think we all sort of went back and forth of which one we liked better. And they had to do the one that stayed in is The one, what was the other one? I can't remember. It was.
Let's look and find out.
No, I know which one stayed in, but what was it we were going back and forth on?
It was either that they answer the phone or they don't. Basically, is what it was. Remember, there's one. I think there's one ending where it was like, "Don't answer that," and they just kind of
That's
keep
right.
driving. There was one where they don't necessarily answer it, but somehow you see that the host is still affecting them mentally.
That's exactly what it was. One version was that they just say don't answer it and go driving down the road and all is well and kind of sweet. And actually, you know what? I fought it, but when we put it in, we did shoot it and cut it, and it did work.
Didn't you see them toss the phone out the window or something? Or?
We
Something
were
along those
we were gonna
lines,
shoot
yeah.
that. The problem is it just ended on the wrong tone. Although we liked it, it just didn't seem like it ended right for A, a horror movie, and B, for a Hellraiser movie. And so we came back with this. And this was actually an insert that we shot when I came back in the second pass as well, because originally we had, and I think you'll see in the Bota material, shot with the hand of the host holding the telephone.
Yeah.
And like he had made the call, but it was too on the nose. We get what happened. We didn't need to see it twice. And it was just very, I always said it was kind of Tales from the Crypty. I mean, you expect to hear the crypt keeper come in and giggle. And that's it.
There we have
Cut
it.
to black.
I tell you what, Rick. I know everyone kind of says they thought Deader was the cool movie and it was stylish and everything, but I really like Hellworld, and I think
Fun flick.
It was
it
a lot
is.
of-
It's just great fun, you know.
It was a lot of fun shooting. It really was. I thought it worked really well.
Ah,
Snowy Highfield.
Snowy Highfield.
That guy gets around.
Wow.
He does.
That's unbelievable.
He looks hard, Snowy does. He's a good man. Jake Myers.
No, again, Rick. Yeah, just to piggyback on that point, it was the difference in the two films. You know, where Deader was just so like it was really heavy and very dark. You know, not that this one is like a walk through the park, but this one has more of sort of a ensemble feel, and you know, it has more to do with the fans and their own sort of interaction with the movies. And again, I thought you did a great job of balancing both these movies.
MK
M.K. Gleason.
came out as Sarah Compton. Wonderful woman. Quite an adventurer. She loved Bucharest.
And Angie Schmidt.
Mm-hmm.
Mrs. Ron Schmidt.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Well, it was a challenge to shoot, and we talked about earlier not getting the script and not having much prep, but Nick, who's here today, you know, talking was good enough to come in and help us out today. But also when we were over there, you flew over on a couple of different occasions. How many times did you come out? You came out for Deader and this one, but
Came out twice, but
you
both
worked
were
really
sort
hard
of
on it, and
extended.
it was nice to have the studio, somebody representing the studio, come out and actually not just tell you there were problems, but help you find solutions to the problems. So it was appreciated, their time and effort in the movie.
Oh, no problem. They misspelled Mitch's name. Gary, did you see that?
Did they?
M-I-C-T, not T-C-H.
I've got to give a shout out to my effects crew. It was a very hard prep because we only had literally a couple of weeks to prep both movies. So I mean, there was a lot of late nights, but everyone kept their humour. And even though we ended up building some things that never got used, but I mean, you know, it was still great fun. And you know, working on the Hellraisers.
I always thought that assistant to Mr. Bota was my dad on the movie. But Maria, she was a really wonderful person to have around. She helped out quite a lot.
Actually, I think she appears on the Deader DVD
She does.
in the run-through of the location scout for the,
And there's Kirk.
Kirk Maury,
yeah.
And then
Suki, and Chad, all of Jameson's hard-working effects crew that spend many, many hours moving pixels around.
Kirk Morey may be the actually most important person in this whole process because he's the one that's going to edit these tracks.
we love Kirk. Kirk's great. And there was all the Monkeyland guys.
Yes.
So all these songs here, Rick, we're just basically working with the music supervisor and just
Digging through. She had some,
Right.
you know, a lot of these people were just tapes and CDs that we had found that we liked, and then others were friends of ours. I think Melanie had some friends that she had, and then a friend of mine, Trey Kleinsmith, who has a band called Skip and Go Naked. We were able to put a couple of their songs in there. And then Boss House Music, Break Off Your Wings, and they did that ending sequence because there was a current track that I just loved that I had cut in the temp music, and I think it was like $500,000 to buy the song. And we were just so close. We almost had the studio convinced to purchase it for half.
One of those you'll notice was actually Chad Goe, who was one of our digital effects guys, contributed a song as well.
Yeah,
So
Chad,
it's
that's exactly right.
very
Chad.
much, and I think the rest of these guys trace back to your garage, don't they, Rick?
That's it. Clive Barker, Keith, and I had to put my wife and daughter in there
of course.
because it was
You
gone
know,
for
but
about
I
5
gotta
months.
say, that's the only time those four people
Will
are
ever
going to
be.
actually be
Yeah.
on the same card, don't you think? Rick?
Probably. I gotta
Copyright
believe it.
2003. Wow.
Scary, huh?
Yeah.
Can we switch that?
Yeah,
Maybe
couldn't we update it?
2007 just to give us ourselves a little wiggle room?
Hellraiser
Bota.
Hellworld. Good job,
Good
guys.
work, dude.
Thanks, Mike Fox, for putting this together.
See you, everybody.
Good job.